Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. We've got a long title today, but a great topic, so let's do it. What's the scariest thing that's ever happened to you regarding the paranormal, black-eyed children, glitch in the matrix, etc.? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I was working late at night by myself in a small machine shop. Yes, I know, OSHA, whatever. The machine was running, and I was at the computer next to it working on a program when I felt as if someone was standing behind me. I turned around and experienced the most bizarre and terrifying feeling that I cannot fully explain. It felt like I turned around right up against a solid stone wall. The noise from the machine was muffled. My own breath bounced off something and back to me when I blew out, and my eyes were trying to focus right in front of me for a split second. And then nothing. The noise came back, and as I was staring at 50 feet of empty shop floor like there was just something there. I'm a grown man. I'm not afraid to say that I screamed. I felt terror like I've never felt before in my entire life. The closest thing I can think of is if you turned around and you were face to face with an effing bear and just walked away. I used to be a manager at a retail store, and we had a few weird things happen there. One day I found a bunch of broken glass shelves that all the employees said they knew nothing about. I checked the camera footage, and there was no one in the room. Lights were off. All of a sudden, the motion sensor lights came on, then a few seconds later all the glass broke. Once I had to work overnight with 2 other employees. There was music playing over the speakers, but at some point in the night the music stopped and all of us heard a baby crying over the speakers. I told another one of our managers about the crying baby, but he didn't believe it. He said there's always some explanation for things like that, until one night he was there late at night and heard the same thing. Said he locked up and ran out of the store. A guy posted on here once about how he was at a friend's house drinking. He left at 10 p.m. to go home cause he had work in the morning. He walked the 2 blocks to his house and saw his brother heading out. He asked his bro where he was going so late on a school night, and he said, "It's 7:30 in the morning, I have class." To this day, he doesn't know why it took him almost 10 hours to walk 2 blocks. This is the story I originally made my account to share. I was 19, driving around town with a friend sometime after midnight talking shit and listening to music. We drive past this road with a signpost to an area neither of us have heard despite both of us living in the town our whole lives. I asked if she wanted to see where the road went. She said yes, so I pull a U-turn and off we go. It's a paved road, and heavy trees on each side and a few houses. Nothing unusual for either of us. I was living on a street like that at the time. Anyway, within about 5 minutes, the conversation just kind of dies off. And a few minutes after that, I start to get an uneasy feeling. Then we passed a kangaroo on the side of the road. It remained perfectly still, just turned its head to watch us drive past, and I got the distinct impression it was standing guard. After that, I just got more and more anxious. I ended up turning to my friend and saying, "This is going to sound stupid, but can you..." She was already taking her seatbelt off. "I'll lock the back doors." We kept following the road even after that because we're stubborn bitches and don't know when to admit defeat. It was at least half an hour because my 60-minute cassette tape had flipped over twice between pulling over the paved road and coming to a sign saying dirt road ahead. By this stage, I felt physically sick and my skin was crawling. Without a word, I did the quickest 3-point turn I was able to do and we headed back down the road. The closer we got to the turnoff, the better I felt until we were back on the main road where I felt like I could breathe easily again. We told a few people about it. Got brushed off mostly. We didn't even drive past that turnoff without flinching or shuddering for a few months. The feeling of dread had been that strong. Then about 6 months later, she turns to me out of nowhere and said, "Let's drive it during the day." So we went. My friend has both her phone and mine on her lap with emergency numbers punched in. We're playing upbeat pop music to try and keep us calm. It took us less than 5 minutes to reach the dirt road, and on checking the odometer, the paved section was only 1 kilometer long. Once again, we got the F out of there. Have never been back. No idea what the hell was going on that night, but I can say with certainty that we were not meant to be there. Even 20 years later, if someone mentions the area on the signpost, we shudder, and recently I turned to her out of nowhere and said, "Hey, was that you with me on that road where..." "Yes, and I don't want to talk about it." I've had a vivid memory of seeing a demon-like figure above my bed when I was a small child. I vaguely remember it smiling at me. I also don't remember hiding in the closet from something. There was another time when I was in high school, 16 or 17, and I was staying at my dad's house. He was out of town, and my sister and I shared a room at the time. I was sound asleep, and I remember my feeling someone got in my bed with me. It wasn't uncommon for my younger sister to do this if she was scared for whatever reason, so I moved over a little so she could get in. I was laying on my side with my back to her. I laid there for probably 10 seconds or so before a sudden realization came to me. My sister was at my mom's house, and I was in the house alone. I was frozen for a moment, but then sprang out of bed and ran straight downstairs, grabbed my keys, and got in the car. I immediately left and called my mom, who lived a few miles away. I told her what happened and that I was going to come stay there that evening. I've had the same recurring event happen in my dreams over many years. I can sometimes lucid dream, but occasionally it involves dead relatives. That's how I know it's a dream. At the instant I realize it's a dream because of the dead relatives, a being, don't know what else to call it, pops in front of me and physically wakes me up, usually saying something along the lines of, "You shouldn't be here." Had a couple of instances off the top of my head. When I was a kid, I was sleeping one night. When I woke up inexplicably, I was staring at the ceiling, then I felt something invisible, or an invisible force dive into me. I've had sleep paralysis. This was not sleep paralysis. It felt like something dove into me. Dad bought an old house in Indiana. One day I was getting ready to leave the bathroom when I saw this blue man, broken glass, torn up clothes, slack-jawed, hunched over with one hand grasping part of the doorway. I blinked and he was gone. My dad used to joke about ghosts in that house. I never told him that story. House I rented in college had bizarre electrical problems when I first moved in. Fire alarms all started making the low battery sound, and so we took them down, took the batteries out, and put them away to sort out later. When we had people over, one of them started going off. It was in a drawer without any battery or electrical connection. When we opened the drawer, it stopped. Light switches stopped working randomly. It's never all at once, usually just isolated to a room, then they'd start working again. Nothing too strange except one night, when I was trying to turn on the lights to go upstairs, they weren't working. Looked up the stairs to see a shadowy figure at the top of the stairs. I was awake, standing, and I felt the shock and horror frozen in place. The figure darted away without making a sound, and the light switches started working again. We didn't have any issues after those initial few weeks. I currently stay in a basement of a house that is built into the side of a hill, so I have a window in my room that is almost ground level. One night I heard and felt something massive shift outside my window, then the sound of something drumming its fingers against the window. This one could have just been a weird dream. About 10 years ago, I was a boot in a sniper platoon out of 2nd Marine Division. I had terrible sleep hygiene naturally, coupled with barracks alcoholism and a pack-a-day smoking habit. All of these things contributed to my horrible sleep paralysis or shadow people visits. I had these so frequently I was no longer scared of them and could just power through. This story was the strangest thing that happened to me during one of those aforementioned phenomena. We had been in the field for about 4 days, in and out of hides with very little sleep and extended movements throughout. I'd pulled the balls to 4 radio watch after moving about 8 clicks through the night. I was exhausted and could barely stay awake. Anyways, I was leaning against a tree, bobbing for apples, when I heard a voice call out my name like it was my buddy Tyler. "Dude, come on over," it said. He was my team lead, so I did as told. I walked over to where he had ruck flopped to pass out, and he was dead asleep. I just figured he might have been talking in his sleep and carried on back to watch. This time I heard something rustling in the bushes, and if you know Camp Lejeune, you know it's an effing swamp with all kinds of mean shit in it, so I thought, oh, F a bear. What? Problem was, in Tyler's voice it said, "Dude, you gotta come look at this shit." I want you all to understand, I'm a doc, so naturally I was like, oh, F this, and shined my white light on it. Where my light touched, I could make a figure out about 8 feet tall. But, in the strangest way, I couldn't make myself understand what the F it was. It just stood there, hunched, not moving, not breathing, but standing on 2 feet. It was like a shadow, but it wasn't. Its eyes had no color, not even black, but I could tell they were there watching me. I remember I didn't feel fear, but confusion, and an incredibly powerful urge to walk toward this figure. I remember taking a couple of steps toward it, and the closer I got, the safer I felt. All the while, it just stared at me, not making a sound. "Doc, what the F are you doing, you dipshit?" the real Tyler said. I turned to where he was sleeping, and my team lead was understandably pissed off that I was basically white lighting the whole tree line and stomping around like an F. I turned back to where I last saw the creature, but it was gone. To this day, I rationalize this event as me falling asleep standing up and having one of my shadow people moments. A bear at Camp Lejeune? That would be pretty rare, but I spent a lot of time in those woods. I never saw a bear. How about you guys? When I was a kid in my basement, I'd see a guy in a robe with a pale face come out from behind the furnace. He told me to always have the light on, as he liked the light. One day my mom came down and turned the light off because I didn't need it. He came out and angrily switched the light on again, telling me I like the light on. I kept the light on until we moved, and I never saw him again. If the basement ghost says he likes the light on, make sure mom knows to leave the light on. To this day, I still have no idea what the F was up with this, but a few years ago I was walking home around 2 a.m. from one of my friends' places, small town, so no one was out at this time. Super calm, quiet, summer night. As I'm walking about a block and a half ahead of me, I see this long-haired man on a wheelchair dressed in a white gown. From what I could see, he looked and sounded middle-aged, but I could mostly only see his outline in the top of his head, cause he had wheeled himself directly under a streetlight. Effing faced toward me and just screamed, "Ah!" at the top of his lungs. It was by far the creepiest and weirdest shit I've ever experienced. I immediately made a left and ran to the next block over and jogged home. Part of me was trying to make sense of it, and thought maybe I was on those prank channels or something. I tried looking so many different things up online a few weeks later, in case I'd been on a camera or someone's prank YouTube channel or something, but never found anything. Super weird. Also, because of how dark it was, there was no way he would have just known where I was walking. Like I said, we were at least a block and a half apart, and I was walking on the sidewalk under some trees, where the streetlights weren't directly on. The way he just wheeled himself out and turned to face me was effing weird as hell. I've only ever told 2 people about this in my life because I've always doubted anyone would believe me, but I swear I cannot make this up. I live in a house that is at least a century home. We have much of the history of the home, to include the various residents and their causes of death. One of the former inhabitants was a family of 4. Daughter died at 6 in the home, son died at 10 in the home, and the mother threw herself down the staircase. We've had several people notice a feeling of someone else here. Our cats diligently guard 2 specific areas of the house, and the front staircase, mother's choice for death, are often bypassed for the back staircase. A few years ago, at the start of winter, my husband and I both began to feel that something wasn't right. We couldn't put our finger on it. I sent a text to my best friend at 6 p.m. from our bedroom on the 3rd floor. I then woke up to someone shaking me at 1:09 a.m. I was curled up on the 1st floor in the fetal position, with my phone grasped in my hand. I distinctly remember rolling over. I just needed to sleep a few more minutes, then I'd get up. The shaking was so intense that my glasses came off my face and I crawled to find them on the other side of the room. What happened next will forever make me question all we think we know. As I reached my glasses, a woman shouted at me to stand up and open the window, loudly. Loud enough and with enough force that I was shocked awake. I opted for the closest window and could not open it. I realized that I was trying to open it with one hand. I looked at the other and saw my phone was ringing. It was my best friend's face on the screen. I answered to hear her and emergency services telling me to go outside. I roused my husband and we made it out the front porch as emergency vehicles were arriving. Our house had a gas leak. There was no one in the house except my husband and I. My best friend received a call from my number, a woman saying there was another gas leak in the neighborhood and to hurry. The aforementioned child residents of the home died due to a gas leak from the lamps in the house. The mother threw herself down the stairs 2 days later. I'll make a post about this one day, but about 3 years ago, I was watching my 2 little brothers, twins, when a black mist or fog started to creep up the stairs. It was very subtle at first, but then it became more opaque, and a weird humming or whispering started happening, and a feeling of dread and death loomed over me. I thought that I was just tired and was imagining things when my little brothers started to cry and feel scared. At the same time, my 4 dogs were going insane, barking and growling at the weird mist thing. It only ended when my entire family walked through the door coming home from the store. It did not go away imminently. It was around 30 seconds before it dissipated. I don't believe in the paranormal in any way, and to this day, I can't explain it. Well, you made a post about it now, so the first sentence was redundant, but I still like it. Good story, creepy mists, always good. Glad you guys are okay. So when I was a kid, maybe 10 years old, I was at school. My school had an extended program where you could stay late if your parents worked late. I was a regular, and usually one of the last to leave. Anyway, I was playing on a jungle gym alone, and towards the very back, they had a steel dome thing that you could climb, and it was designed so that if you fell, you'd end up in the dome. So as I'm climbing, I feel my legs lift and I'm horizontal. I get pulled off and dropped. My eye hit one of the hexagonal connectors, that's also steel, and knocked me out cold. Some kid found me a while later, laying outside of the dome, looking up. When a teacher came and asked what happened, I was called a liar after explaining. Like, why the F would I almost kill myself? Age 19, lying on my side in bed, facing the wall. Suddenly the mattress behind my shoulders compressed massively. It was like someone huge had sat down next to me. Eyes wide open with horror. I start hearing really, really deep breathing. A thought washes over me. Oh my god, I'm going to see an actual ghost. They're real. The breathing gets heavier and I brace myself. On 3, I'm making a run for it. 1, 2, 3. Shit. I'm locked in. I can't move with fear. I'm at my grandfather's house and the only thing I can think of doing is shouting for him. Except nothing but a whisper will leave my mouth. Panic had completely taken over. I lay there for what felt like an eternity, just hearing this breathing, when suddenly a surge of adrenaline kicked in and I swung around as quick as I could and threw a punch into the air. Whatever it was had gone. Terrified doesn't cover it. I've had a few moments here and there, but I'll tell one that I saw a reaction of. So, where I live, there was a house for sale. It had a family in it, a young 20 to 25-something man who had killed himself in his room on the second floor of said house. Local rumors had it as PTSD, as the man in question was a Marine, and one that supposedly had a couple younger siblings. My family moved into the neighborhood about a year or two afterwards, and that house in question had been vacant. A family moved into this place shortly after we came into the neighborhood, newlyweds with 2 kids, one about 8 or 9 and the other like 2 or 3. It wasn't unheard of to see lights flicker, especially in the room that faced the street, the same room this guy had, the same room that her youngest kid was living in. Sometimes my mom would send me over with cookies or to ask for sugar, etc. Small things like that. And older kids would always complain about how much colder the second floor was than the first. The mom in this new house would tell my mom how sometimes she'd hear floorboards creak at night, and she'd think it was her kids, only to go check on them and find them fast asleep, and they had no pets. She told my mom sometimes she'd get the feeling she was being watched. Or, one time, when her and her hubby were arguing late at night, not quite screaming levels, but close, and she swore she saw a man out of the corner of her eye on the staircase, armed with a gun and guarding the way to the children's room. A blink and you'll miss it thing. Her hubby saw the same thing, and they both called the police only for nothing to be found. Their things would go missing then, but only the adult things, not the kids. She was so creeped out, she even got motion sensors for the house. They'd go off at the most random times, usually at night. And then, one day, the fire alarm went off. The lady was the wife of a firefighter. She screamed for her 2 kids to come to her, and both the oldest and I came running over. Playdate. She was the only adult in the house. The youngest was MIA. Naturally, she ran upstairs, also still looking for the source of the fire, to grab the baby, screaming for the youngest over and over again. There's no fire. At least none she can see. No smoke in the air. Nothing. That still doesn't explain why the fire alarm was going off, but right now, the lady was more concerned about the baby, so she bursts into the room to see her 2 to 3-year-old having a tea party with stuffed animals, as you do. She scoops her kid up and runs outside. She asks her youngest how come she didn't obey her. Why didn't she come outside with us? Her youngest goes, paraphrased obviously, but the nice soldier man told me it was okay. He said it was a bad alarm. The mom, what? Police were called, but there was no adult in the house, and the lady was definitely spooked. They moved out less than a month later, and I remember occasionally looking up at the window when I was growing up, curious to catch a glimpse of whatever or whoever was there.